So before we dive into what GitHub is, should first talk about the technology that is behind GitHub, which is version control. Now, version control is a file system that keeps different versions of your code projects organized and lets you switch between them, so you can try new things without breaking code that you already know is going to work. One of the most popular versions of version control is Git, which is the reason for the name GitHub, because GitHub, it's a place to store Git repositories. It's a remote repository. We will be covering using Git through VS Code, a little bit of the command line, and we will mix that in to GitHub. We want to start small before we move on to GitHub, so we understand what's working in the background. Anything you'd like to add, Juan?
Oh, that was pretty much well said. Can't think I can top that off.
Okie dokie. I know a lot of you are currently in the night class of CodeStack, so all of you should have Git VS Code installed and maybe even have a GitHub account made. Does anyone here not have Git installed? All right, that's a good sign. So I'm gonna share my screen. All right, I'm gonna be using two things at the beginning. The first, it's gonna be Git Bash, which is an alternative to the command prompt or PowerShell. I prefer Git Bash because it's can be used on the three most popular operating systems. And then we will also be using VS Code. Okay, I'm gonna have Juan. Do you have VS Code opened up as well?
Yeah, I have mine open.
All right, beautiful. I'm gonna have you show them how to start a new project and initialize it with Git visually, and then I can do it through the command line. Start simple using graphics, and then we'll go to the command line. So I'm gonna switch over to you, Juan.
Sounds good. So here we go. Excuse the mess on the desktop. So the way that I personally use GitHub, here I have it open already on my account here. I'm just going to put that off to the side. So let's just start out by having an empty VS Code. And what I do on my personal preference is that once I'm signed in into my GitHub, let me just bring that up. I have my repositories. And then when this is just my preference, I click on new. And then it's going to prompt us to the screen where we're going to have repository name, a description, set to public or private. For demonstration purposes, I'm just going to call this, let's say, meetup test. Test one. And I'm just going to give it a small description of creating a repository. And I'm going to set it to public, and I'm going to add a Readme file. You want to add a Readme file when you're creating applications, and you want to give someone who's going to be looking at your code or downloading it, giving them instructions on how to use it. So once you have a repository name, a description, and whether you want to set it to public or private, and you add a Readme file, you can click on Create Repository. Once you create the repository, you should see your account and then where it's located. And then you should see this where it says that it's on the main branch. So I'm going to make a different branch for now. I'm just going to call it one branch. Now I have the main branch and also the main. So once you created that branch, you don't have to, but I do it just for other projects as well. You're going to see that under code, there's this HTTPS link. Go ahead and copy that link. I just click on it and Control C. And then here is our Visual Studios. When we go over to Visual Studios, we can click on View, then Command Palette. And you should see many options. The one we're going to be using today is going to be Git Clone. So if you can't find it at the top, since this is recently used, you can go ahead and type in Git. And then you'll see other options. For this one, go ahead and click Git Clone. And then it's going to say provide repository URL. So since we copied the URL from GitHub, we're going to go ahead and Control V to paste it. Once you paste it in, go ahead and click enter. And it's gonna pop up to select a repository location. So for demonstration purposes, I will place it on the desktop. And you can see a lot of files on here. And we're gonna make it into a new one. So go ahead and right click, hover over new, and you're gonna see new folder. So I'm just gonna call this folder meetup folder. Once that's there, make sure that it is selected. And once it's selected, you're going to select repository location. And it should say cloning Git. And then it's going to pop up and say, would you like to open the clone repository? Go ahead and open it. And now you should see the repository name that you made on GitHub. And it says meetup test 1 with a Readme file. Did all of you have any problems getting there?
Why
All
is
right.
there a README file?
Oh, I created a Readme file when I created the repository on GitHub.
Okay.
So once we see that, we should see main. And then if we click on main, remember how I created another branch? So we have the main branch and the Juan branch. We're going to stick to main for now. And for this one, we're going to add a new file. And we're going to call this index.html. Now, you see that this U came up? That means that something was changed. Something's untracked. That means it's not added towards the GitHub yet. So I just press Shift-1 and enter. This will pop up pretty much to start a new HTML file. And I'm just going to do an H1. I'm going to say hello there. If we were to live serve this right now, let's see it. We should get a hello there. Nice. But if we go over to our GitHub and we check out the main branch, there's nothing. All we have is a README file. It's because we haven't committed anything to it yet. So let's go back to our VS Code. Do you guys have the extension for GitHub? If you guys do not have the extension, let me know. Cool. So we can continue. So it says here that we can add a message and that there's some changes. So for this one, we're going to call this Init, since it's our first change that we're going to be making. And then right under this, you see that there is a plus symbol to stage the changes. Normally, when you have lots of changes from different files, you will have one or even hundreds. So you do not want to go one by one. So if you just want to add them all, just go to the changes and then stage all changes. It should move it over to the stage changes, and you should see it right here. Now, once they're staged and you added a message, you see this check mark on top? It says commit. So let's go ahead and commit it. It's gone, but it doesn't mean that it's fully sent to GitHub yet. If you look at the bottom, there is an incoming arrow and an outgoing. There is a 0 and a 1. That means we need to push one commit towards the main. So if we click on the arrows, the pop-up message will appear. It says the action will push and pull commits. So for this one, you want to go ahead and press OK. Give it a couple seconds. There we go. The 0 and the 1 are gone. If we go over towards our GitHub and we refresh, you should see our index.html with a message of init. It'll tell you what was added on the initial commit. Now, remember that branch that we created with our name on it? If we were to go into that branch, you'll see that the index.html is not into that file. Why? Because we only committed towards the main. So there's different ways that you can push and pull information from VS Code. You can even do it from a pull request on GitHub, where you can create a new pull request. So since it's the visual version, and I want to show you guys how I used to do it in the beginning, we're going to create a new pull request. Is everyone okay up to this point? All right, we can continue. So let's click on new pull request. And it's going to be saying main for the base and comparing. So we want to get from the main to my one branch. And it says that it's able to merge. And it says that it has a one change file with 12 additions. So let's go ahead and create a pull request. Once again, it's going to say open a new pull request from the main to the one branch with a comment. I always like to place a comment on here, and I just like placing that it's going from the main to one branch. And we can create a pull request. It's checking if it can be merged automatically. Perfect. And it says that there are no conflicts with the base branch. So once we have this, we can go ahead and merge pull request. Again, it's going to give this init, since it's the same pretty much that we created on our first init from the VS Code. And we're going to confirm merge. Nice. So now it's telling us that it was committed into the Juan branch and that it is merged. So if we go over to our code tab, you should see that it says that a recent push has been made less than a minute ago. So let's take a look at the Juan branch. Nice. Our index.html still on here. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So this is when you're sending data or even files from different branches. If we take a look at our VS Code again, you should see that we are still in the main branch. But what happens if we want to move over to the other branch? So let's go ahead, click on the main. You should see origin, and I have one branch. Oh, that's the branch I want to go into now. So let's click on that one. Give it a couple seconds. And pretty much sync it up. You should see push and pulls will commit from one branch. We want to do that. Give it a couple seconds. And it's up to date. Now, the same thing can be done with multiple branches. So when you're working with the team, you can actually send files to each other without actually having to send them the file. They can just work on their branch. then you can have different branches such as a dev and a main, and you can just pick and push and pull from each other, making it more streamlined, which we'll be showing off later today as well when we do pair programming. Now, let's go towards Hugo. He'll be showing you how to use Git Bash and more with the command line.
Okay, dokie. So let's say you just want to start coding right away. You don't want to go through logging onto GitHub, creating a new repo, and then cloning it. Let's just say you're starting a new project and you're coding. So I'm working on something called a tip calculator. All right, it's an empty folder created on my desktop. I bring it into VS Code, and now VS Code is opened to the tip calculator, and there's no documents. I want Git to start tracking the changes from the beginning. So there are two ways you can do this. You can use the command line, and let me just set this to bash. You can do Git Init. And again, the reason I prefer using the command line is because Bash is available for Windows, Linux operating systems, and Macs. So you learn it once, you can use it everywhere. As opposed to using it through VS Code, your work may not always provide VS Code. It could use Visual Studio or Atom or a million other text editors. But the command line will always be there for you. So you can run Git Init, and then you just saw that VS Code changed right there. It noticed that Git was initialized on this project and no longer gave you the option to start it via the buttons. It's already tracking changes, but let's do it the visual way. I'm gonna so Git, like I said, is just a directory. It's actually hidden, so you don't see it. It keeps different versions of your files in that hidden directory. So if you want to get rid of Git, you can just delete it. And see, VS Code went back. There's no Git tracking on here anymore. So the visual way of initializing a project is initialize repository. And now it's keeping track of changes. So let's make a new file in here. Gotta move this out of my way. Okay, we're gonna save this as index.html. And like Juan had said, you see the changes. It's currently untracked. This is the status of your version control. Let's say you weren't using VS Code and you wanted to know your status. You would do Git Status in your command line. And it's telling me that untracked files, U for untracked, is currently index.html. Now I want to tell it, hey, keep track of that file I just made. So you can do Git Add and then the file name, or if you have multiple files you want it to keep track of, you can do Git Add dot, which means everything. The visual method of doing that is the plus symbol right there. That will add it. So now it tells you that it's been added. Like I said, this is a Git status. Here, if I do Git status again, it's now telling me it's keeping track of this file. Before it was red, now it's green. Color will depend on your settings, but it will tell you it's not keeping track of it. Now I'm gonna try committing this. This is a commit button. It just says, I am happy with my changes. I am gonna push it onto the branch, and it's gonna be it's gonna have a screenshot of what the project looked like at that time. Before you commit, you can make as many changes as you want, and Git will not track all the changes. It only tracks the changes when you commit. You've committed to the to what you've written. You're happy with it. Let's see what happens if I try to commit. Just a second. So git commit, that is a command. It's required to have a message on why you're committing or what the current commit is providing. And you can do init or initial commit. That's usually the default message. You can be more specific, but this is usually pretty good. And then it's going to tell you, hey, I don't know how to track your changes because I don't know who you are. So I can't say this person committed these changes because like Juan said, this is perfect for pair programming or work environments or jobs. This allows people to work on one project together, but it wants to know who did what. I tried to commit and it said, please tell me who you are. So if you have a fresh install of Git, you will get this message when you try to commit. So to set these properties, it tells you specifically what to run. So I'm going to do git config. I'm going to configure it globally. Global is optional. If you don't do the global, you will only commit your email and your name to this project, and any other project you use Git on, you will have to do this again. So if you do it globally, it's going to give that name and email to every single project you work on. So my user email is hugo@gmail.com, and then git config. If you're using the terminal, you can hit up to go to your previous command. Name, it's Hugo M. And then let's see if it stored it. Git config user.email, and it shows my email, so that is tracked. So just a second, I gotta scroll down my notes. All right, so now we're ready to commit. Git commit, initial commit. One file has been changed. And now if I do a git status, it says nothing to commit. As you see here, the visual git status says no changes have been made since the last commit. Now let's talk about branches. Why would you need a branch? Why not just use main or master branch? The reason is main can sometimes be serving live projects. Using GitHub, you can integrate the main branch that whatever code is in there, display it on an actual website. Well, why would you want to use, why would you want to test on something people could be working on? You don't. So branches were created so you can keep any test code or any updates separate from what other people are using so you don't break it. That's what branches are for. If you want to create a new branch, we can go down here. This is to view your branches. You can create a new branch. If you have multiple branches, you can branch off of them. So you can branch from, and then you give it where you want to branch off from. So we'll just create a new branch, and we'll call this Hugo branch. When you're working in projects, you can have your own dedicated branch, or you can have branches named off of what it is implementing it. Sometimes you'll see like hotfix or a new feature branch, but for this one, we'll just do Hugo branch. And VS Code, when you create the branch, it actually changes it to that branch. So let me go back to main. and let me show you how to do it through the command line. So git checkout is actually going to switch you to the branch you want if it already exists. If it does not exist, you do the B flag, so it's -B, and says, I want to check it out, but first create it. And then git checkout a new branch, and then we'll do test branch. So it says switch to a new branch, and it called it test branch. Git checkout. Currently, I'm going to switch back to main. Let's say I didn't know what the name of the branch I came from was. You can do git branch list. Oh, git branch list. Yeah, it's double hyphen list. And it's like, oh, I want to go back to main. Or if you go here, you can get git list is the same as clicking that button. It lists them right there. So git checkout main. So like I said before, git checkout -B checks out a branch, but only after creating a new one. It actually is it's two commands in one. You can actually run git branch test2 branch to create a new branch, but you haven't switched to it. I have my terminal set to show me what branch I'm on. So we're still in main. So once you create it with git branch, then you can do git checkout. You can ignore the B since you don't want to create a new one. It's already been created, and you do test2 branch. And now I am in test2 branch. Just a second, please. Any questions while I'm scrolling through my notes?
Yeah, I have a question actually. When you added the Git Bash terminal, how did you do that? So like the integrated terminal into the VS Code?
Okay, yeah. The default one is Control tilde. Control tilde opens it up, and it's usually set to PowerShell. You can also do View and Terminal. And as you can see here, there's a shortcut. So View Terminal will open this up. It's usually set to PowerShell, but I like Bash because, like I said, Bash is on all three operating systems, while PowerShell is only limits you to Windows.
Right. Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yep.
Perfect.
What if I don't got Bash in my drop down?
If you don't have Bash, you must install it. You can search Git for Windows, gitforwindows.org. I love this. This will be available on all three operating systems. You download, you select yes on all the default settings, and then once it's installed, you go back here, you do the down arrow here, and you can choose from the list. And I did set default profile to Bash.
Oh, I see it. Okay. I just didn't know how to get it on that list. I got it already. Cool.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna do git checkout branch, and I want my index.html, which is gonna be a web page. I'm also gonna need a style, a way to style it with CSS, but I don't want to edit the index on main in case somebody was looking at it. So I would do a style branch, and then I would make a new file. So Control N for new file. I'm going to save this as style.css. Save. Untracked changes. It's saying this is a new file. I want to keep track of this style, so I'll do it the visual way, the VS Code way. So add style sheet is going to be my message, and like I said, this is mandatory. You want to know why you're committing. Add style sheet. So track the change, and then we're going to commit it. And now it's committed. It's still here. It's not in here because nothing's changed since the last commit. And I'm just going to show you what Juan showed you, that branches keep track of separate files. So I'm on style, and you see the style sheet. And then I go and I do a git checkout. Let's do it the visual way this time. I go back to main, and it says style.css is deleted. It does not exist, but I know I created it. Where is it? It's on the style branch. It will not ruin your code on main at all. It will not modify it in any way. And that's the beauty of branches, not hurting things that are the way you want them to be. Okie dokie. So now we
I actually have a question. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry, please. That's what I'm here for.
So is it best practice to have in a group project, is it best practice to have a styles branch if there's multiple people messing with the styles CSS?
I would say no. When working on a team, you should have a separation of concerns. So one person should be working on styles while somebody else is working on HTML code. The reason this is recommended is because if two people write changes to the style sheet and you try to merge them together, you will get a merge conflict, which we will try to recreate and resolve later on. But I wouldn't have a dedicated style sheet, because if your team is set up properly, everyone can be on one branch, and as long as everyone knows what tasks they're on, no one will step on anyone else's foot, and you shouldn't have any conflicts. So I would not make a style branch. This was just an example of a new feature. So this was a feature branch, adding style to my project.
Got it.
To add to that, that's on bigger projects for the most part, where a person will work on style, because there's a theme in mind already for big projects, right? And then someone's already working on HTML, and then eventually when the style is ready, and then the HTML and all that, they can coincide now, right? For your guys' projects that you're doing right now, that won't happen for the most part. But yeah, go ahead, Hugo.
Okay. Now let's talk about remote repositories. It is the Google Drive for any project that's being tracked by Git. It takes whatever is in the hidden Git directory or folder and saves it in the cloud. One of the most popular remote repositories is GitHub. GitHub is free. Use it for every single one of your projects. Your hard drive may fail, and if you have free cloud storage, why not use it? Put every project on there, even if you don't think you're gonna devote too much time to it. Just put it up there. It doesn't hurt to back it up if it's free. So I'm gonna go to GitHub and log in. These are my repositories. different commits will show up here. Now I want this project, which I called tip calculator. I want my tip calculator to go to the cloud in case my computer crashes. So I will do a new repository, a new place to save my work. Make the name short but descriptive. It's going to be a tip calculator. I already have tip calc. Use tip calculator. Test repo. Repo short for repository. Test repo for tip calculator. Public if your project has confidential information such as passwords, which they might have if you're working with databases and all that in the future. Make it private. You don't want those passwords to be out and about. But if you know it's not going to have anything sensitive, to it public. You can add a Readme file, but later on down the line, you will work with frameworks that create a Readme file when you create a new project. If that happens, don't add a Readme file, then you'll just have two. A .git ignore file is very useful. It will purposely ignore tracking any files that aren't useful. Like if I wanted to take notes, let's say this is for notes. Save this as a notes.txt. Says right there, notes.txt is untracked, but I don't even want Git to know it exists. That's where a Git Ignore file comes into play. You write the name of the file you want to ignore, or even the directory. So I want to ignore notes.txt. You save that as a .git ignore. And Git ignore is untracked, but I want to track that file because it will tell everyone what I'm trying to ignore. But as you saw, my notes.txt, it's not even on there. It still exists. It doesn't say deleted, still here, but Git ignore deletes things you don't want to push up to repository. It's really good for files that have passwords. You'll have like a settings file, and it's just a bunch of passwords. Put that file in the Git ignore, and you won't push it up to the cloud where people can see it. Let's just commit this. If my internet cuts out, I apologize. I have an unstable connection at the moment. So I'm not adding a README. I'm pretending my project will add that for me. I'm not adding a Git ignore because I manually created that. And choosing a license, you won't work with licenses for quite a while. So don't add that. Create repo. Now, GitHub is very friendly. It will show you how to put code on here. So if you know what to do by yourself, here's a link. Or you can follow these steps. Create a new repo. No, I already have a project I'm working on, so that doesn't sound like it's for me. Push an existing repository. I have an existing project. This sounds like what I want to do. So here are the 3 steps it wants me to do. So I'm just going to follow them. Git remote. So this is a remote repository. I'm going to add that. Origin, it says it's going to be like a variable. When you say origin, it will mean this location. So I'm setting that origin to this. Hit enter, and no errors. We're good. This step is optional. So -m does two things. It says move, which if you move it to a new branch, it's the same as rename, and then it'll force it. If it doesn't already exist, it'll force it to exist. And the reason GitHub makes you do this optional step is because Git by default names their first branch master, and we want to be more politically correct nowadays. So we're trying to make the transition to main. So it adds that here. You can ignore that or follow it along. I changed the settings on my bash to already set everything to main, so I'm going to ignore that step, but this is just to rename. So if you're wondering what that's doing, it's a rename command. And now I'm going to do a git push. I'm going to push everything up to the cloud. I'm going to say upstream. The U flag, the -u is a little difficult to grasp, but it's setting settings for the future. When you do a git pull, you don't have to say where you're pulling from. By doing the flag, the -u, it's gonna know where to pull from in the future. And then I'm gonna push to my origin, which, like I said before, is just that location. And what branch am I gonna push? I'm gonna push main. Now we should see some output. Security feature. Not anyone can push code to your repository, so it's gonna ask you to sign in. And then we're going to refresh this page, and I should no longer have steps to add code. It should know code already exists. So I only see my main branch. Why is that? It's because I specifically told it when I pushed, only push main. You can run that same command for all your other branches to put them up on GitHub. You see my .git ignore. It knows to ignore my notes, and you can see my index. I have not added anything to my index. Any questions up to this point? Perfect. So like I said, excuse me. All right, so like I said, you can push other branches. Git push up to origin. And now I want to do my style branch. That looks pretty good. And look, it notices the changes and tells you. It recommends that you merge your branches just so all your code is in one spot. You can ignore that. You don't have to follow its recommendations. Now, let us, okay, so I am on my main branch. I have a git ignore and an index file on here. I am happy with the styles I've added to my style branch. Now let's get this on main. Juan already showed this. That would be through a pull request. We're pulling the code from what's inside the style branch into the main branch. So we're pulling from style into the main branch. Able to merge means there's no merge conflicts. We're going to create the pull request, add style sheet. And we're going to say merge. Some branches exist permanently. That's usually main and dev. Main is for working code. Dev is for really close to working code, but you're testing out new things. And then you can have a bunch of other hot fixes and new feature test. And when you're done doing a fix, you don't want that branch there just sitting there forever. So you can delete a branch if you're done with it. Now we go back to the code. We're on main. Main now has ignore, the index, and the style. But I'm over here on VS Code, and I only still see those two ignore index. There's notes, but we told it to ignore that. Where's my style? Here it says styles on main, but I am on main, as you can see here, as you can see on this corner, but it's not there. The reason is we push the changes up to the cloud, but now we need to pull those changes down. And there's a command for that, git pull. So it's git pull from origin to main. Now I see my style while I'm on my main page. So that is how you merge two branches, and you do git pull to pull them down from GitHub onto your VS Code, onto your local machine. Graphically, that would be here. Options, pull. There's also push. They can do pull. Nothing's changed. And then this sync button, it does push and pull simultaneously. Very convenient. Now git log is if you just want to see what's happened in a branch. I've had one commit that added the style sheet, and this other commit is my initial commit. So it tracks all the commits from both branches and puts them into one. So its history merges as well when you do a git pull. When you do a pull request. Questions up to this point? Okay. When working with GitHub with a group, you want to allow people to modify the code in your repository, and they can do a pull request, but you would have to approve every single one on there. It doesn't make for a good flow. So you go to there, you go to settings, and then you go to manage access. And this is you start collaborating with other coders. So I'm going to invite Juan, if you could pull up your email and accept this. So I know his username is JohnCodePass, and I'm going to add him as a collaborator. Now he can do anything he wants with my code because I trust him. Only trust people. Only allow collaborators who you really trust with all your code.
So on my screen right now, I just got the email from Hugo and I got an invitation whether I can accept or decline. So on my email, I'm just accepting it. I'm accepting his invitation. And now I can modify some of his code.
Oh, let's show them this. You now have access to a remote repo. How do you get to work on it on your local computer? If you can just go through the steps of getting it down to your local computer.
Yeah. Okay, so when he sent over the email, this is what would appear. And it's just going to tell me to view the invitation. Once I accept it, it says that I now have access to his repository. So for this one, I'm going to download the zip, show in folder. Oh, oops, it opened on the wrong screen. So pretty much when I downloaded it and I just got it and extracted all. Once I extracted it, here is that file. There we go. Let me close that one up. And here is the file that he was working on. So normally when you're working with collaboration teams, everyone normally gets their own branch. So for this one, I'm gonna create one. Nice. And since it created from the main, I get a copy of all his previous work as well.
Okay, so let's try to. The one thing I hate seeing still to this day is a merge conflict, but they're not that hard to deal with. So on your local copy on the index, Juan, can you create an H1 tag with your name? I'm sorry. What branch are you on?
Oh, this one did not go through. Let me see.
And then I saw in the chat, Zach had posted that pricing used to be an issue for GitHub. That was true. You could have public repositories, but you had to pay for private. But since Microsoft has bought it, now you can have an unlimited amount of private and public. So you can use both of them to your heart's content.
Cool. So here is the main branch that he was working on. And I'm going to go to my branch. Right now, it should be identical. And if we look at his, there was nothing on it. Same thing for the main. So for this one, I'm just going to do my shift 1 enter. And on the first body tag on line 10, I'm going to do an H1 and I'm going to say, my name is Juan.
And I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to say my H1 something completely different. Then we're going to try to merge the branches, and we should have a conflict because Git, when it merges, it reads the lines to see what the changes are. Sometimes it knows when to put a line above and below, but when everything's identical except for one line, I believe that is when we can have our first merge conflict.
So, similar to what I was doing in the beginning, I just staged it, added a message, commit it, and then I'm going to pretty much push them. Give it a couple seconds. Okay, let's double check our GitHub. And edit on line 10. It now says on line 10, with a header 1, my name is 1.
And can you check the same file but on a different branch?
Absolutely. Let's check the main branch. He added a greeting. On line 10, he says, "Hello world, I am Hugo." So let's try to merge my branch with Hugo's. We're going to create pull request. Oh, and it says cannot automatically merge. So just my habit, I'm just going to say on to main. And it'll still let you make a pull request, but it should say that conflicts have risen. So let's take a look at that. And it says the branch has conflicts that must be resolved. Conflicting files on index.html. So on the right side, we'll see a resolve conflicts. And it's saying that my branch right here, it's saying that it's saying h1 with my name is Juan, and it conflicts with an h1 of hello world, I am Hugo. So what we have to do is, this is what I do for most of when we're having conflicts and we want to have both pretty much the same data synced up. I just, here, I'll show that again. Since we want to have both information on there, I delete this one. Then this one right here. Then that. And you should see now that on the right side, it says mark as resolved. It's clickable. It says one conflict. And we're going to mark that as resolved. And it says resolved with the check mark and a commit merge. Perfect. Now it says this branch has no conflicts with the base branch. And we can merge, edit on line 10, confirm the merge. Perfect. Pull request successful, and we can now close the Juan branch if we wish to. We'll leave it open for now. And if we take a look at the main branch, line 10 still has my name is Juan, but on line 11, it now says, hello world, I am Hugo. And if we go over to my previous branch, nice. So they're both in sync. And similar to before, now if you take a look at the VS Code on my branch, it says that there's 2 incoming changes. So let's go ahead and pull that to keep my files up to date. Press OK. Perfect. Now we have the changes, which are hello world, I am Hugo. So now both branches are up to date. Is there any questions so far?
The important thing to remember is when you have a merge conflict, have both people whose code is about to be altered or modified, or the code that is causing the merge conflict, have them there when you're deciding what to keep and what to delete. There have been issues in the past where what you think should be overwritten should actually have accompanied the code. So always communicate with when you're going to modify someone else's code. Anything else you'd like to add, Juan?
I guess we're good. We showed that the merge conflicts, that to me in the beginning, that was the worst part about learning GitHub. It took me a while to understand how to get rid of the conflicts. And sometimes I would accidentally delete something I was not supposed to. But luckily GitHub is there for us and we can just grab the code that we synced up last time. So at first it's a little intimidating, especially once you start getting lots of conflicts on files that you have over 100 lines, but it can definitely save you. I know it saved some of my projects in the past. So it might seem scary. You might not want to use it, but it's best to get used to it.
And
Okay.
to add on to what Hugo was saying, Git and GitHub are a community tool, and it means that you should work with your team, but it doesn't mean that you should ignore them just because GitHub exists. It doesn't. It's not meant to like replace talking to your team. It's meant to enhance it, and that's what Hugo's getting at when he said that you should have people, the person that you're doing the merge conflicts with, you should talk with them about it, because this is a tool to use to enhance your teamwork. So just keep that in mind. Hugo.
Okay, the last item I would like to cover is Git Stash. Before I start sharing my screen, I'm just going to talk about what Git Stash is. Git Stash is like it's a pocket. You take code, you put it in your pocket, and you take your code out, and you can put it anywhere you want. It's a little place to save when you're not ready to commit. You like what you've written, but for some reason you're not ready to commit. One of those reasons could be you're working on the wrong branch. Let's say you start coding, it's beautiful stuff, but you notice you did not change from main. You should not be working on main. Other people are using the code. It's on a live site, but you don't want to delete everything you just made. Git Stash is the solution to that. Git Stash will let you save the code, will let you change to a new branch, and then you can put that code onto the new branch. That's a quick summary of what it is. Now let me apply that. I am only seeing hello world. I'm Hugo. Why am I not seeing Juan's H1? Anybody know why I'm not seeing Juan's H1? Yeah, that's exactly right, because I have not pulled the changes from GitHub. That is the correct answer. So I can do it through buttons right here, pull, and there it is. I am on main. You for your own projects, work on main. Let's say this is a group project. Main is only for code that you're ready to share with everyone. So I'm going to add some code. This should not be here. I really love that, but it really shouldn't be here. So I'm going to go to my source control, hit I. If you don't see the changes, well, let me save this. If you don't see the changes, you can always do this refresh button, and that'll check for any changes. So I love this code. I want this on another branch, and I don't want it here. So 3 dots, stash, and then click stash. Stash message. It's a little message to you on what that little bit of code is. You're gonna do a stash. I'm gonna do a command where it shows all my stashes. You can have multiple little bits of code, and you want to be able to identify them. That is what the message is for. And then it's gonna be, I like the warning I made. So it's not here. I do refresh. It's not on there, but it still exists. Stash. Don't know where it is on there, but you can do a git stash list. Git stash list. There it is. No double hyphen. So it was created on main. I like the warning I made. So now I'm gonna switch to a new branch, git checkout. I'm gonna make a new one. I'm gonna call it warning. Now I'm on the warning branch. I don't see the code there, but it still should exist. And it still exists. So now I want to apply that to this branch because I can do anything I want on this branch. So we can do git stash apply, and then I believe it's the number it's at. As you can see here, stashes have numbers, and they should not be here. It was applied. I am on the warning branch, and now I can commit it because I'm comfortable committing to a branch I can do anything with. Add warning. And now that change is permanently locked. And that was the final thing I wanted to show you. So if you're working on the wrong branch, but you love what you've made, stash it, switch branches, apply the stash.